Hello, good
Right.
morning, good afternoon, good evening. Tonight we're going to have a discussion, and Godfrey is going to lead the discussion. Go ahead, Godfrey.
Thank you. Greetings, listeners. This is Godfrey, as has been introduced. We are going to hold a short discussion session on political developments taking place in our motherland, Zimbabwe. Our main focus is the impending and seemingly inevitable elections. Seems we can't escape, we can't avoid, nowhere to run. And the country is just being led to the gallows, although some see it as a route to the biblical Canaan. All this without a fight, in visible fights from any corners. And this is an election that is supposed to be taking place in the next few months. This subject is being hotly discussed on many platforms these days. Naturally so, as we draw close to the election, which we don't know the exact date at the moment, but we are very close. We know this is a topic that takes a lot of time to discuss because there are so many things that come into this. We have come a long way. But in our case, we shall try to restrict it to question and a short answer, trying to contain it within the limited time that we have given ourselves. Anyway, to help me discuss this, I have Wilbert and Ben. Good evening again, gentlemen.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. Good evening, good morning, viewers.
To kick it off, I shall pose a question to you, gentlemen, starting with you, Wilbert, or whoever, but Wilbert in this case, for a short question and answer. Is Zimbabwe ready for elections? If yes, why? If not, why? Just short answers. And the same will come to you, Ben, as well.
Well, Zimbabwe is going into the elections, but to me, the elections are not going to be free, fair, and credible. But they are going ahead anyway.
Mm. Okay, Ben.
Yes, like as you said, it's inevitable because I think everybody that is willing to engage is prepared to to go ahead despite every shred of evidence that is before them that this year will not end well for those that want to oppose. That's what I think.
Okay. Are you ready? Because you are part of the process. Are you ready? Wilbert?
Well, I think as an individual, whether you are ready or not, the elections will go ahead. So, in that regard, one may just as well participate and fit wherever they can fit. In this particular case, my participation is to say these elections are a fraud and they shouldn't be taking place. So in that regard, that is my input in the elections.
Okay. And Ben?
No, I don't think I will be part and parcel of the physical uh, voting, actual voting, going to the queues and partake of all this. Because whether I feel whether or not I do, whether or not I am ready, the outcome is sealed virtually.
Okay. But the question was specifically, are you ready? because I always find that most people would be knowing that these elections are next week or so, but when it comes to the time and if things are all laid in place, they are not ready to do so. They have not gone to check their names. They have not even registered to vote. I think what we need to do is to get ourselves, because that is part of the process, to get ourselves ready for that. So, anyway, I shall go on to the next question. Is it possible to hold free and fair elections without the fundamental tools which Wilbert has mentioned or generalized, without the fundamental tools in place? I suppose the answer is in the question there. But what do you think, Wilbert?
Well, I think if you define the elections as they must be free, fair, and credible, and then you understand what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections, that immediately tells you that if those basic requirements are not there, then the whole process cannot be free, fair, and credible. And in our case here, we have already documented evidence of how the process is so flawed that the whole election process is really truly meaningless. I mean, we are just keep repeating the same mistakes without correcting them. And the last elections have been declared as these are totally meaningless because you didn't have even something as basic as a voters roll, a verified voters roll. And yet now we're going to an election and we still don't have a verified voters roll. So in that regard, these elections are totally meaningless, Godfrey.
Okay, and also going to that, we can say they are meaningless because, should I say, Wilbert is not registered to do so. Is that part of? Can that be part of the factor that we can call the tools are not in place because Wilbert is not registered?
Well, Wilbert as an individual, I mean, election would not be condemned as not being free, fair, and credible just because a few individuals are not registered, for instance. But when the whole process, the whole voters' roll, you are saying, okay, let's have a look at the voters' roll, and you cannot produce a verified voters' roll, the whole voters' roll of all these people who are supposed to be voting in those elections, then you say to yourself, so what kind of elections are you holding? You know, you don't even know who is the electorate and who is entitled to vote and who and how they're going to vote. You know, you don't have a record of that. So what exactly are you doing here? So the process is not so much focusing on the individual per se, it's on the process, on the whole, look at the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm. And Ben, I don't know, have you come in on this one? Is
Yes,
it
I,
possible?
I would like to refer to what the European Union and let me just say some of the international observers that actually have been observing our elections for 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 quite a number of years. They have always said our election process is not it lacks accountability and traceability. Just like what Robert is saying, the biggest issue is who are the people, because you don't have a verified voters roll. Who is coming to do the vote? Where is he going to vote? The whole process from pre to post it is not traceable. So how do you come up with with the figures that you came up with? Who's there to verify them? So
Mhm.
I like I said, I will not partake of something that I know is not is not straightforward. It's not being done the way it's supposed to be done.
Okay, I shall go on to the next person here. It seems all is set. Yeah, when I say all is set, I'm just referring to everyone is focusing on participating in the process. That is internally. And there are no dissenting voices being heard. Why? Why is that? Is everyone satisfied, or is everyone sort of tired of raising any opposition to the process? Why is there no dissenting voices being heard from within Zimbabwe itself? Wilbert, do you think you can?
Well, there are dissenting voices that have take for instance the issue of the failure to produce a verified voter roll. I think Tim Pachendu, for instance, have done an excellent job of highlighting that problem and highlighting some of the shortcomings in the voters' roll, the copies that they were able to get. And they've come out and clearly said without a verified voters roll, this election will be totally meaningless. Other people have also voiced their concern. Take, for instance, the issue of the failure to register people in the diaspora. So and then the issue of violence and so forth. I mean, there are so many aspects that make this election totally meaningless, and those issues have been raised by Zimbabweans and non-Zimbabweans in Zimbabwe and outside Zimbabwe. So it's not as if people have not been saying anything. They've been saying this process is flawed.
Right, but all I hear is like everyone, or maybe it's a dominance of a voice or unfair dominance of a voice, the voice of like participating, uh, getting closer, or everything being put in place for participation. But you have said that, but what is the voice of the international um, observers at the moment regarding participation?
I think I think what happens in Zimbabwe is we know what we are doing is wrong, but we do it anyway. The opposition know there is no verified voter roll. The opposition know that these elections are being rigged. So the question is, why do they participate regardless of all the evidence that they know about? If we can go back, they actually went to the constitutional court with part evidence to show the irregularities that surrounded the previous election, but they are still going to participate anyhow. Despite all that, they will still go ahead and participate. So when we call on to the international community to say, help us when we are actually not helping ourselves, how do we expect them to help us? They will just leave us to wallow in our mud.
Well,
Yeah.
personally, I think what we've got to remember here is that all these people, when they've said, take for instance, Tim Pachedi, when they said, "Oh, you need a verified voters roll," the law says you need to produce a verified voters roll. The um, responsibility for producing a verified voters roll is with SEC and the government of the day. Now, if they have decided that they're not going to produce a verified voters roll, the individual or the individual organization is helpless. So in this particular case, they've gone ahead anyway and ignored all the complaints. And I agree with what Benjamin is saying there as well, that in this particular case, the fact that the opposition itself has decided to participate regardless of all those flaws and so forth has only given Zanu PF the confidence that it can still go ahead and hold the elections and blatantly rig them and get away with it. you know
Mm.
and in this case here, you can't blame Zanu PF either, because if they know implementing some of the recommendations, take for instance this issue of producing a verified voters roll, is going to constrain their ability to rig the elections. And ZANU PF wants to rig the elections to win them. And they know that even if they don't implement those recommendations, produce a verified voters roll, they can get away with it. Why would they want to implement it? So it feeds on that process feeds. It has got a back feed. The fact that the ZANU PF knows that opposition will participate regardless of the process being flawed and illegal means ZANU PF can confidently say, "Well, let's go ahead then and do it." And as long as the opposition participate, we'll get away with it. And that is exactly what is happening.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, that's the question I wanted to pose as well. Why does the voice of uh, the dissenting voices, is it falling on deaf ears? Why is it? Is it being suppressed, or it has nowhere to shout? In this case, I'm saying it's the media, the communication media is not allowing them to say their say on
No,
this.
I mean, now we have social media, so nobody really does watch ZTV. So we cannot, maybe in the rural areas where you don't have, but I know majority in all these towns, they're now on social media. Almost everybody has got a smart device on them, so we cannot give that uh, as an excuse. And I think it's about time where we stop making excuses to say this or that. The problem is, if you look at how, I want to give an example of Triple C, they come up with they do talk about the irregularities. They know that the voters' roll is not up to standard, right? It's not meeting the standard that it's supposed to meet at the end of the day. But they will say it on any other day. But the cry that they will win these rigged elections is so loud, it kind of just, you know, kind of just shuts down that still voice to say, but we need to put in reforms. We need to get, things as basic as a verified voters roll, uh, to protect the citizens, when during this time. It's just it's an any other business, let me say. But the main concern is to go ahead and participate. So this is why, you know, a lot of people would not talk about all these other things, but rather the participation itself.
I think probably what people need to understand is that the fact that the opposition in this particular case, they are not really uh, um, inconvenienced greatly by the fact that the process is flawed. Because at the end of the day, they know, regardless of the process being flawed, they still get what they want. And in this particular case, what they want is a share of the spoils of power. And Zanu PF has guaranteed that in this case by making sure that the opposition, regardless how flawed the process gets, opposition always get about 1/3 of the parliamentary seats and the senatorial seats and so forth. And they've since enticed the opposition to keep on participating. Look what they did late last year in November. They gave all the sitting members of parliament this housing loan. Everybody knows that it's not it's called a loan, but they will never have to repay it. Over and above the US 60,000 car loan that they got when they got elected. And then they've got all these other perks. The incentive to participate is there. And in fact, Mnangagwa has gone one step further and seen to it that even those who lose the elections get something through this Pollard. So we can see a situation here where we, the three of us here, and many Zimbabweans out there, know that these elections are flawed and ZANU-PF is rigging them. And yet we know with the participation in 2023 will just be as a, um, um, deeply involved as the 2018 and 2013 before it. Because these opposition people know it doesn't matter about the rigging as long as we get some of those seats. And if you get onto the gravy train, you are going to enjoy the good life for the next 5 years. And for that reason, they'll never contemplate boycotting the elections. That is the trap we are in.
Okay. Wilbert, you mentioned Pachedu, and then anyway, you mentioned Pachedu, and why Pachedu has a voice, a dissenting voice. Why, and there are many other voices, why is there no coalescence of these voices just to make it louder? Then you mentioned the social media. We have all the tools. All those dissenting voices, they have got all the tools to themselves to make their voice louder. Like we are doing here, why should we not partner all those other voices that have the same, that are sharing the same views with us to make our voices louder?
I don't think it's the government and the opposition have ignored them because they've not heard it. They've heard those voices, they've heard those concerns. But like I said, they don't care. ZANU-PF knows it needs to rig the elections to stay in power. The opposition knows that even if the elections are rigged, they will still get a certain number of seats on the gravy train, and they are quite happy with that. And in terms of power, power lies in the elected officials of the day. You and me, we can shout all we want, but the real power lies with the elected officials. That is what government is all about. That is the relationship between the ruled and the rulers. We can hold the rulers to account in a democratic way. That's why it is important for us to maintain the right to a meaningful vote. But once that has been eroded, then your power as the ordinary citizen has been taken away. You have nothing now to do. Now we are dealing with the mafia here, where the two are now working in cahoots, and during the day they appear to be fighting all the time, and we think the opposition is being effective, when in reality the opposition is now cooperating with Zanu-PF. They will go into these elections. Zanu-PF needs the opposition to participate to get legitimacy, and for that they will reward them. And the opposition are happy with the share of the spoils. Yes, of course, they would want more, but they are happy with the status quo as it stands. MDC and the opposition, none of those opposition parties are going to implement any meaningful reforms. They are happy with the status quo. I think that is the message that ordinary Zimbabweans should understand out there.
I would like to very much agree with what you were saying. They they appear as if they are on our side, but in I mean it's been over 23 years. We have been exercising the same method, or that they've even gone on to ensure us that we are going to win big this time around, and we have always fallen short, or we have been given a raw deal. I think it's about time where we look at the big picture. Why don't we try something that is different? We are always participating and promise that we will surely win, or if we do not win, we will do something about it, and nothing is actually done about it. It is you and me again that is made to suffer, to go into the streets and try and win back that vote that was lost, whilst you were trying to vote them into power. No, I think it's unfair. It's time where we become the wiser.
Yeah, I think I do agree with. I think it was you both, particularly when you say the power lies not with the ordinary voter, but with the elected leaders. And in this case, I think it was you, Wilbert, who mentioned that CCC is going. Maybe the voice of CCC is the one that is causing confusion, where they are sounding confident of a win using their wire. So CCC in this case is the one that is suppressing the voice of the otherwise the dissenting voice of the ordinary voter, because they are giving people hope of coming up with a win that will benefit the ordinary voter. But in the end, well, although I agree with you partially on the gravy train seat, maybe in the end, if nothing else works, they say they have a fallback on the gravy train seat. But anyway, we shall just move on and then ask: do we see a boycott as an answer?
Sorry, Godfrey, before we move on that
Yes.
one, I just wanted to refer the listeners who might be listening to this book written by David Coulthard, and in that book, I think people should read them if they get a chance to read it. He clearly admits that the system, um, the present electoral system, is so flawed that it really is meaningless to keep on participating in these elections. And this is the passage I'm referring to. And the logical step would be to boycott the elections. But in 2000, he's talking about 2013. He could not. He and his fellow MDC guys could not boycott those elections because each side feared that the other one would participate and get the few gravy train seats that Godfrey was referring to, and that is the trap that they've fallen into, where they are so greedy now that they are now focused on the few seats that are available, and they would not do the logical thing to do, the obvious thing to do, i.e., say, no, no, we cannot keep on participating in an electoral process that is so flawed that in 2008, MDC won 73% of the votes and yet still failed to get into power. That is what we are talking about here. And I think that is the honest view that the opposition failed to articulate and admit. And as long as they cannot risk losing those few seats, we can forget about the opposition boycotting elections. They will never do that. Sorry, Godfrey, go ahead. Godfrey, you got your mic muted.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I had posed the question whether boycott is the answer, and what are its strengths and what are its weaknesses. Because, in fact, combined with that, I wanted to ask whether there is a chance of redress after the boycott.
So let's go back into 2008, the rerun. So when there was a rerun, why there was a boycott during the rerun, and Zanu PF decided to run by themselves. I think you still remember when they decided to contest by themselves, just for formality as always. But then there was they were actually told, no, 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 this is not how you can behave in a democracy, because you cannot run by yourself and call it democracy. That is impossible. So with that, we are also taking the positive from not doing anything. When Changirai said we are not going to participate in this election, in this rerun, he took no position and we won something out of it. We got the unity government, the GNU. So that was a positive. And why change a formula that had worked? We could have kept the same formula and it would have been okay. This business of going to participate, let's look at historical fact. Where has it gotten us? Where has the plans or the strategies to back up in case something happens, we lose the elections or they are rigged? Or has there been any plan that has been implemented and actually achieved anything? No. So the best thing I think we need to do is also just follow historical facts and do nothing. Boycott and hope we take away legitimacy of the process. That's what I think.
Okay,
Well, Godfrey, on the point of boycott, you have got to go to first principles. If you have come up with the rules of how the election should be conducted, and those basic requirements are not met, surely you've got to accept. There has got to come a point when you're saying there is no point in participating in a process that is so flawed, it makes the whole process meaningless. So boycott is always an option. To take it off the table and say, well, there can never be any boycott, is nonsensical. So in this particular case, for instance, we have got a situation where the ruling party, ZANU-PF, is given the responsibility to make sure that the elections are free, fair, and credible. But what about if they decide they are going to play around with the electoral process to their advantage, so that they are no longer free, fair, and credible? Are we going to keep on participating regardless? The answer is got surely to be no, because otherwise, what is the motive for them to meet the rules? The rules are there for a purpose, and if you're not going to obey the rules, you've got to say, well, there's no point in me participating in this process, particularly when you know by participating, you're giving the process credibility. And in this case, the rigging ZANU-PF regime legitimacy. So are we participating just to give ZANU-PF legitimacy for rigging the elections? That becomes nonsensical. At least if they're going to rig the elections, I have absolutely nothing to do with it. I don't want to have my name tagged onto it and said, well, I participated and I gave the regime legitimacy. That is the point.
Okay, I think you have raised very good some details, historical, particularly when you say boycott has been a tried and tested route that we took before, and that was the closest that the country got to a solution. And it can also now be tried again, because we have been participating and nothing has been forthcoming from our participation. I also, is there a chance, say, of redress after boycott, and will be heard by who? Internally or externally? In other words, putting up a case after boycott. And also tied with that, is there also a chance of a fair hearing after participation, internally and externally? I'll just combine those and probably close the session with that. After boycott, how can we put up a strong case? Because, mind you, you have been saying there, I think it was you, Wilbert, you said the government has been getting away with it. If they've got away with it through boycott, do you think they can be pushed into hearing any complaints after?
Well, I think we've got to be realistic. At the present moment, like I said, the main reason why the boycott is not going to happen is because all the participants are as keen as mustard to participate. ZANU-PF for selfish reasons, and the opposition for the sake of the gravy train seats. So a boycott, it will be an individual or groups of individuals who will boycott. But the best thing they can do is articulate and make it very clear that the process is flawed, and also that the opposition are participating for the sake of greed, not because they're going to win these elections. By doing so, we will be making it very difficult for organizations like SADC to endorse the elections, because I think SADC is critical. Other international organizations have condemned them in the past. But the main reason SADC has been endorsing them is they will turn around and say, well, if people of Zimbabwe, i.e., if the ruling party and the opposition are keen to participate, then everybody else in the country is as keen to participate. So by coming out strongly saying, no, we are not keen to participate in this meaningless process, we are putting our marker and saying this process is flawed. And we are taking the challenge to SADC leaders themselves and saying, how can you say those elections were substantially free, fair, and credible when you don't even have a verified voters roll? Particularly countries like South Africa that have run successful, free, fair, and credible elections in the past. Botswana is another one. Zambia is coming down that route as well. And those are the countries who will be saying to them, how can you say that when you know this did not happen? How can you say that in the face of all this violence? How can you say that in the face of all this blatant intimidation, vote buying, and so forth? So that would be our position. And I think in this particular case, that voice of the rational person who's saying this process is so flawed, it's totally meaningless to participate, is being heard.
So you are saying we can consider boycott as a lost effort. We now are looking at action after participation, but highlighting and documenting all the flaws in the process to make it a bit more effective and impactful at the end. Is that what you see as well, Ben?
Yes, I mean, once you are willing to take that position to say, I will not partake of this uh, this election, because you have to state your reasons why you're not doing it. And the good thing and the advantage that we have, a lot of organizations know about this. They have actually warned about this, but it is actually the opposition that will not listen. And thankfully, there is Wilbert that knows why. The gravy train sits. They cannot afford not to participate because they do not have any other way of making paying their workers wages. They don't have any other way of meeting financial obligation. Triple C survives through you and I, so
Mm.
they have to do this no matter what. This is the time where we need to stand back and see where they will get once people just decide, okay, we are going to sit even in our house and not be part of it. Even a low voter turnout would be better. There would be, you know, there would be that voice to say, why did people not come as they were supposed to, than to just always just go and cash in our votes, and so that they at least benefit, and they come back another 5 6 years down the line to do the whole process all over again and still cry power. No, things must change.
Mm. Okay, yeah, I think I quite agree with you both, and we seem to have departed from the call for a boycott onto the action after the participation. And this is what the country is hearing for anyway. We have also seen that Zimbabwe has been operating without an international license, or yes, like we can say an international license. The only license which they got was just internal license from the Zimbabwe institutions, but the external institutions are a bit seemingly divided now, but maybe we can gather facts as we go along towards this, closer to this election, and maybe we can raise an issue after. With Zanu, it's business as usual, and with the opposition, CCC in particular, and any other, as mentioned by WIB, that even the losers, maybe we can say in an accounting term, as long as they can break even. In other words, they are not making huge profits out of this process, but they get something to sustain them. So most of the opposition is fighting for a break-even point. Unfortunately, that break-even point does not serve a good purpose for the ordinary voter. So, but for Zanu itself, although we can say they are getting away with it, but they are also panicking and really eager to get that international license for them to operate to the fullest. So I think unless someone else has got something to add, because I've run out of time actually. Has anyone got something to close with?
Well, I'll just quickly add there that I think it is important to understand that the opposition here, what Ben is saying is that they are getting an income. You should not get an income and a living out of somebody else's misery, and that point must be made by sustaining ZANU PF, keeping ZANU PF in power. They are the ones who are helping ZANU PF remain in office at the expense of the ordinary people, 50% of whom now are living in abject poverty. The right to a meaningful vote is it's not a luxury. It's part and parcel of solving our problem of bad governance and the poverty that has engulfed our country. And we cannot allow the opposition to stay in power while the millions of people suffer. That is totally unacceptable. And I think that point must be made. And the opposition, this is why we've got to address them in a more aggressive manner. You cannot. This is just selling out like Judas Iscariot for 30 pieces of silver. You sell somebody else's life and hope and future just to enjoy yourself. That is totally unacceptable.
Okay, Ben, have you got any closing remarks?
Yes, thank you. So for my closing statement, I would say, as a people, we need to start doing things for ourselves, to look at the big picture, to see who stands to benefit from all this whole election fever. You will find the answers in there. It is the ruling party and the opposition. Just like you saw when they ended up giving each other half a million each, and for the MPs they got 40,000 each. Who gets paid? Who gets given a loan when 5 months down the line they will be out of a job? Those are all the signs that people need to look for themselves and to think outside the box, to actually see that it is actually us that is being used in this to do all the dirty work, and to act or to bring a picture that our country is a testament of democracy, which is not even the truth. It's far from a democratic nation, and we need to, the only people that can achieve democracy or to bring back democracy into our country. It is us, the people.
Thank you for that. And back to the listeners, I think it's all agreed that there is need for proactive action, understanding of what's really going on, and after the process, I think reactive action to be taken in order to address the wishes of the ordinary person. Our leaders, as mentioned before, they are happy. They are breaking even. They are neither making huge loss to themselves, but they are just managing to survive in the same way as the government is managing to survive with the partial recognition that it has, but it's business as usual. In the same way as the opposition, it's business as usual, and even the losers in the left, it's still business as usual. In other words, they are not suffering much, the leaders themselves. So it's up to us, you and me, the people at the bottom of the ladder, that should coalesce and come up with a united action to seek a solution that pleases the ordinary person. I think we can close it at that.
Thank you very much, and good night.
Good night.